Thank you so much. And if you're watching us May 1 at 8 p.m., then you're watching us live. Well, the Portland area, this may go further than that. But anyway, we're here May 1, Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month, and this is Progressive Radio and TV. And our show tonight is about universal basic income. And our guests are Melanie Calvin. I apologize, I misspelled that word up there. Melanie, thank you so much for coming. And Chris Keith, and thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
And these are very knowledgeable people, and we're going to have a good time tonight. You know, we started off by talking about why it's an important issue right now at this time. Why is universal basic income an important topic at this time, Chris?
Well, what we've seen in the past with technological development since the Industrial Revolution is a constant upswing of the ability for machines and computers to do tasks that humans used to do. You noticed this in car manufacturing. You notice this in the software world now, where computers are actually starting to do a lot of the coding. And when this happens, when this upswing, which grows exponentially, reaches a certain point, the majority of Americans are going to be unemployed. When you talk about a country with 350 million people, half of which cannot find work, there must be a system already in place, not one that we're catching up to, but one that is working right now to ensure that everybody that lives in one of the wealthiest countries that's ever existed is able to live, is able to feed themselves, clothe themselves, take care of their children, get health care, and receive a proper education.
The time is coming close, too. You're talking about several years, maybe decades in the future, we're going to see a huge dislocation.
Yes. And not just in America, globally. One of the first industries to go, and we're seeing it now, is the transportation industry, which globally employs more people than any other industry. We're starting to see these various cars that are able to drive autonomously. Elon Musk, who does wonderful things, and we really appreciate all the work he does to move us into the future, but he's also
dislocating.
Creating the technology that's going to put a lot of people out of work. And these are not people that have high-level college degrees. These are not people that can easily move into engineering or tech or the space world. These are people that are going to be in a serious amount of trouble if there's not some sort of safety net already in place to catch these folks. We cannot pull up the safety net while they're falling. We have to do it before then.
I agree. And you work with some of the people who are needier than others, Melanie. Tell us about some of your clients that you work with. And what's your business, by the way?
Oh, well, I founded a nonprofit that helps people with disabilities, Americans with disabilities, access the Social Security Disability Program, which is one of our safety net programs. And it's extremely, I started this nonprofit because it's extremely hard for people with serious disabilities to navigate that system. We started Assist with a really firm belief that a basic universal income for people with disabilities.
From your lips to God's ears. Yeah.
So we fight hard for people's disability money. That's, yeah, and I really appreciate you inviting me here because the Social Security Act of 1935 was a form of a guaranteed basic income, and FDR established it for unemployed people as well as retired people. And it, you know, it was part of the New Deal. It was part of the WPA and the CCAC programs, and he felt like he was very proud of that act. He felt like it was a patriotic act to help people in need on that level. So that's why.
But I'm not sure, because Mitt Romney thinks it's patriotic not to pay taxes, right? I mean, it's I don't know, but I agree with you utterly. I mean, his heart was in the right place. I mean, his energy was in the right.
Is absolutely one of the most patriotic things you can do.
Paying taxes?
Absolutely.
Oh, Chris, you don't. I absolutely agree with you. I don't begrudge taxes at all. I do not begrudge taxes.
I'm happy to pay them because I know when I get on the road in the morning, the bridges are going to fall out from underneath me. I know that if I get into an accident, an ambulance can come pick me up. I know that my child will be able to get at least a decent education. I mean, you look at countries that have the highest tax rates, and these are countries that are doing phenomenally well. These are people that have more disposable income because the government is paying things and is able to negotiate prices that they as consumers, if they were doing this privately, would not be able to do.
Yes.
They're shoring up the infrastructure of the country, yeah.
No, your point is absolutely great. And Finland, Norway, Japan, I mean, the high taxes and really quality of life is so high and so on. Those countries are also interested in maintaining employment.
Yes.
And thank gosh, rather than the United States, which seems like we put a lot of hurdles in the way of people finding work.
And they're able to attract employment because the conditions under which you work in these countries are a lot better. They get more consideration for time off or maternity leave or paternity leave in a lot of these countries. So people people view work as less of a bane on their life and more of a joy. When you have all of your needs met and you get to choose a job that you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing, it's no longer work, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's an incredibly timely subject, and we know that a lot of the tech industries are looking at this. It's been a discussion forever and ever, and it's time. It's definitely time. But the monetary system in this country seems pretty entrenched.
Yes.
Currency's been around for hundreds of years, and I really think that this conversation is long overdue. We're going to have to figure something out. It's just, and I'm so glad that some of the big names like Elon Musk and some of the, I can't remember some of the other ones that are involved in this conversation.
You're talking about Silicon Valley too.
Yeah,
a lot of those heavyweights down there.
And the experiment in Finland, it was a 2-year experiment, and they're not going to extend it, as I understand it. And I'm not really up on all of this, but their social safety net is a lot more robust. So their people's basic needs like housing and medicine and food, and they're well taken care of. And this country's safety net is much more porous, especially for single adults. And the things that
disabled,
and the disabled, we need money for things that food stamps won't buy, the dignity items for basic human needs.
You know, I've never heard the term, but obviously it makes sense. I mean, the dignity item, not just simply stuff you drink or something.
Dignity is a huge part of this. One of the things that basic income guarantees do is it gives people actual freedom and actual autonomy. When you talk about transfers in cash versus in-kind transfers, so an in-kind transfer would be food stamps, where you give you give someone a benefit, but they can only use it for a thing, for a certain object, and they lose that autonomy, that ability to make decisions for themselves as to what is most important for them to spend their money on. As we come back to the technological unemployment, when people no longer have to put in labor in order to produce food and items that we need and that we use as a country, they're going to start to have plenty of free time. And the freedom to be able to choose to do something you're passionate about and have dignity when you receive this from the government is huge. It makes people feel a lot differently. When you know
they're contributors.
And when you know that everybody gets it. So it's not, in a basic income guarantee, it's not just the needy that get it. It's everybody from the top tier to the bottom. Now the main model gives it to the top tier in the form of a tax credit rather than a deposit. But there's no shame involved, and
Let me Representative Ryan supposedly is quitting the House, but before he does that, he's making food stamps harder to come by, slashing them. And you also have Trump now, who wants a SNAP box, right? Instead of going down to your local store and buying stuff.
In the old days, they used to call those commodities.
Commodities.
Boxes of commodities,
boxes.
Yes.
But but that is so, what you're saying, though, it just reduces the flexibility. It's indignant. I mean, you get this box, people know that you have this box, versus the flexibility you have when you have this card for SNAP and so on. People are trying to make life miserable for people that need it in this country.
And one of the great things about a universal basic income is it eats up all of the rest of the social safety net programs. So food stamps and housing assistance, all of that is put into this one system. It gives the transfer more efficiently, and it also makes it difficult very difficult for the government to take away because it's noticeable. If you're someone who gets housing assistance but not food stamps, well, you're not noticing when they do a reduction in the food stamps, so you're not fighting for that. But when it's all lumped into one payment and everybody's getting it, and they try to chip away at that, the whole country is going to notice, and it makes it very, very hard to be sly.
That's a great point. England, I guess, has that now.
Yeah,
Britain,
with the credits, yeah.
Yes, and it's you get everything from them. It's absorbed all the other systems, so you can see what's happening.
And they're saving money.
Yeah.
In America right now, we spend $1 trillion a year in tax money for about 126 different federal social safety net programs. But a very small percentage of that actually makes it to those who need it, because they have to, for every state, they have to have
huge layers of administration.
Yeah, bureaucracy and staffing and real estate, and they have to have buildings
it's mind-boggling.
And let's say that you're in one of the, I don't want to pick on southern states, let's say you're one of the southern states that maybe doesn't care quite as much about how well people are doing in the states, and you think, gee, we could cut or curtail or not expand Medicaid and so on too. With that sort of a system, it's probably easier to make sure that you reach the person.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing you'll notice is that in the southern states, although the voters tend to vocalize this distaste for these types of programs, one, they're one of the largest consumers of these programs. They receive quite a bit of help, and they fight very hard when you actually try to take it away. When they put that new health care bill up, I don't think there was a state in the country that did not have angry Republicans, Democrats, and everyone in between at those town halls and at those meetings trying to hold on to that system, to the Obamacare.
It's amazing how my wife gets mad at me sometimes when I say bad things about Republicans, but I think that some people are more inclined to make life easy for other people. I mean, not too difficult for others. And I don't know why the Republican leadership just makes it really difficult to help people in general. I think they want it, well, you have billionaires at the head of it, but it drives me crazy. By the way, I'm from the most southern state in the Union, Hawaii, so I was born and raised there. So if I make fun of southern states.
I've lived there for a year. I lived on Ever Beach. It was
a
nice place.
Yeah, I was raised in Waipahu, right down the road, for about 15 years.
Yeah, real close.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right down the road. But yeah.
Well, I don't know. Back to the.
Good for you.
Back to the universal basic income.
Yes.
It is, when I get people their disability benefits, it is so life-changing because they lose almost everything while they can't work and while they're navigating this system. When we give them their benefits, they become consumers again. They become part of the monetary turbine that keeps our economy going. And it's just a no-brainer.
It's a virtuous cycle. I mean, it's,
Virtuous cycle, I like that.
It's amazing you said that, because that's one of the key points of this system as to the why. It lifts people out of poverty, it eliminates unemployment traps, and it makes them into consumers. The lower brackets of income spend the highest percentage of that income. Billionaires don't spend a lot of money.
Right.
They spend it on yachts, but that doesn't help you and I. But by consuming, an individual actually contributes to the economic welfare of the regime. It helps sustain economic growth, and I think that makes someone do a share of the national wealth. If they're helping the national wealth grow, they should share in that growth, absolutely. And
even if the universal basic income is a modest, say the SSI amount for disabled person that hasn't worked, it's $750 a month. And that's a ridiculously low amount of money.
It's trivial.
It's trivial.
Below the poverty line.
But, exactly. But they're consumers again. They are now part of contributing to the local economy. And it's huge. The dignity factor is huge for them, even though they're still so poor.
Let me just say, our telephone number here is 503-650-0198. 503-650-0198, Progressive Radio and TV. And our show tonight is it time for a universal basic income, right?
Yes.
And what's the title of your paper, Chris? Is that?
So
Yeah,
my paper discusses
these
technological unemployment specifically as it relates to this. So again, as I brought up in the beginning, we have already seen massive replacement of jobs by computers, technology, and AI, and that's fantastic. That's how we move towards the future and a paradise. When we're able to create all the food and the items and the housing that we need with minimal human input, you're talking about a society that has time to pursue life, liberty, and happiness in a real way.
And innovation.
Yes.
Can I give you a little rebuttal by Tom Hartman? One of the things that Tom Hartman says is, in India, for instance, until very recently, a family could not own more than 2 stores. That was limited to that. Okay. Now we have monopolies in this country where you can buy a lot of things more inexpensively or from abroad, but we don't have jobs as much as we used to anymore. And what Tom's point is, a little bit of inefficiency is probably a good thing, rather than, huge restaurants that capture the whole country and so on. You want there to be prosperity on smaller levels for folks, and I absolutely agree with that. But I do think it's
a challenging topic because that goes into a lot of other areas. Laws that concern how large a business can get, monopoly laws.
It used to be enforced before Reagan. Yeah. Those laws were enforced. They were put in place by Teddy Roosevelt and so on, the trust busters. But now, if you're going to go to any major mall in the country, you don't know where the heck you are. You got Sears. Oh no, you don't have Sears anymore. Sears is now gone. But I mean, Olive Garden and just. You're not sure, but the money doesn't stay there. If you're in Walmart, right, it wends its way to Arkansas by 10 o'clock at night, eviscerating small
into the
towns.
pockets of people who don't pay taxes.
Yes, very, very, very little taxes.
And who subsidize the care of their employees with our tax dollars.
Yes, so our tax money goes to
support them. Yeah.
So, in terms of just basic, corporate welfare is something roughly about $6,000 a year per family. So it may be more than that. People just don't. But $6,000 a year that you're paying the major corporations in the United States out of the goodness of your heart. No, because you don't know what's going on. Those are hidden, and but anyway, terrible. But yeah.
Well, one of the interesting things about this topic for me is how in the world are we going to transition into something like this? I think we're very much right in the middle of that transition, whether we like it or not. But I think one of the things we're seeing is that what they call the gig economy.
Yes, I don't like the gig economy.
And the gig economy is, I think, a manifestation of this already. People are having to get really creative with how they're bringing in income if they've been bounced out of their careers.
Yes. And they're desperate people. I mean, yeah.
To your question, how do we transition into that? It's going to be very hard to convince a voting public, let alone the representatives that we currently have that are not beholden to us but are beholden to their donors. It's going to be very hard to convince them to make this change as long as everybody is still well enough okay with how things are working now. It's almost guaranteed that we're going to have to do this during a time of major upheaval, turmoil, when people are really feeling the pain of this transition out of human labor and into machine labor. Unfortunately, at that point, it's a little late. It'll be welcomed, and governments will have no choice but to push for something like this, because the alternative is absolutely unthinkable. Half of the country unemployed is an unthinkable number. When you go up just a few percent, we really feel it. Yes. I say that for every 1% of raise in unemployment, approximately 40,000 people die. 40,000 people. Those are actual lives. But that transition needs to be long enough so that the markets can adjust. Because one of the things that comes out of this is that our market will actually ultimately strengthen. When we give our people that have never had buying power before the ability to make purchases, our economy is going to soar. But there's going to have to be a lot of adjustment in that period. So you want to give a nice, long, smooth curve of a runway. At the same time, you don't want it to last too long. Because if you try to let this happen during a transition of political spheres. So if a Democrat or a progressive implements it, but then partway through the program, we make our switch back to Republican leadership, the derailment they could do could cause more problems than we're there to begin with. So it's a very thin line to walk. Personally, I think about a 10-year progression would be the best way. It just barely goes over a 2-term limit. It is short enough that people will feel the benefits within their lifetime, but not so long that we might get tired of that transition.
When I first read your paper, Chris, lots of food for thought in it. I appreciated the work that you did on it, but I'm going to bring it up. My junior high school, one of my very first novels I ever read was Kurt Vonnegut's Player Piano.
I've never read that. Worth reading?
It's worth reading,
Okay.
and it's right on topic here. That guy was always prophetic. But the premise of that is that this economic change had happened after the Third World War, and so that never left me. That if we are serious about trying to give people some sort of universal basic income, I feel like the current system is going to have to implode.
Yeah. I mean, and we've seen that.
Wall Street is so strong.
And also the Supreme Court, even contracts, right? I mean, it's, once again, we're talking about the bankruptcy
and corporations are people, and it's quite the quagmire.
And that's how it's always been. You know, America's always gone through its largest changes during its periods of heaviest upheaval.
You had a 3-step. Tell me about your 3-step change, what you need to change. You labeled those 3 points. I thought really well done.
Yeah, I think if we want to see, you know, America has a lot of problems, and we discuss them all the time, and we have arguments on health care, we have arguments on the taxes, we have arguments on a million social issues and economic issues, but all of those things, I believe, are symptoms of a greater disease, and you can't get rid of a greater disease by treating the symptoms. You have to treat that source disease, and our source disease is the huge and massive amounts of money that we absolutely allow the wealthy and corporations to funnel into our representatives, our supposed representatives.
Right.
And in order to stop that, we need to do three important things. We need to get rid of and nullify Citizens United. Corporations cannot be people, and money cannot be free speech. 2, we have to criminalize bribery. The lobbying system is completely unacceptable. It should not be easier. It should not be so easy for an oil company to bend the ear of a congressman when it's so difficult for me to do the same. And 3rd, we have to completely revamp the way we finance campaigns. It is not reasonable to allow people to donate millions and billions of dollars through super PACs and through dark money, while I can only afford a couple $1,000 here and there. It needs to be leveled. The playing field needs to be leveled. The vast majority of the middle and lower classes need to have the vast majority of their opinions in our government. And if we can get rid of those things, those 3 things, then all the other systems will work for us, because now our representatives are going to be incentivized to represent us, because if they don't, we cut their money, we don't vote for them, and they don't get to be in power. And right now, that's just not the case. Right now, the incentive is to kowtow to the largest donors, and that's just not us.
One of the things that clearly is disturbing to us in general is the media doesn't focus on these issues. No. Tom Hartman says that
they benefit from them.
They benefit from the horse race, and that's, you know, Les Moonves, who was head of CBS, I guess he's still head of CBS, said about a year and a half ago, "God forgive us because we brought you Trump." But he said, "But we're making so much money."
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. This is free press.
I think Michelle Wolf to that point
yes.
Really drove that home
like
at the correspondence
she sure
dinner.
did, just this last weekend.
Yeah, I thought that was remarkable. And also, the snowflakes on the other side. I mean, there's a Trump thing that says, you know, Trump says, "Screw your feelings," or something, a husband and a wife, but yeah, they couldn't withstand Michelle Wolf. I thought that was really excellent. Yeah. But the media just really does not focus on that. You have terrific people that are willing to share ideas, do all the time, Robert Reich and Bernie and so on too. They just don't get covered on these important issues.
Right.
And even then, there was, this thing that shows that how much the progressive ideas are held in high esteem by general Americans.
The absolute majority, without question.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But though that also is, we have to break up the large media monopolies as much as we can.
Yes.
And Clinton, unfortunately, allowed the joining of various media outlets. So anyway, no, I agree.
And that's happening now with Sinclair, which is incredibly scary.
Yes.
That network is the epitome of modern propaganda machine, and unabashedly, absolutely out in the front.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Some people say, some people say. Yeah. All robots.
Pretty amazing.
And Boris Epstein, who's one of Trump's sort of Russian people, is now one of the heads of the Sinclair. He prepares the talking points for them. Yeah, really scary stuff. Right wing, and we were also talking about global warming and so on. Right. No one's worried about that.
I mean, there are so many major issues that are facing us. Climate change and the impending technological unemployment wave, where we really don't have the luxury that we currently think we have to be focused on the smaller nonsense that we're constantly bombarded with by these media outlets.
Yeah.
And it's not news and it's not important.
I don't care. If I could press a button and not, it's like sports. I don't care about sports.
Right.
Maybe you'll vote sometimes because my wife went there, but I mean, it's, I don't care about those trivial items.
But when we try to bring this up, one of the biggest strengths, not the biggest strengths, but one of the largest arguments they have, they talk about if you give everybody all of this free money, they're not going to do anything. And that's really not the case. So they found through many studies that when people get small windfalls, manageable windfalls, they tend to do very well with them.
Yes.
And there's another thing we have to take into account is that the U.S. has already decided to create social safety nets. It is no longer a discussion as to whether or not we should help the poor. That discussion was over a long time ago. We've made that decision. We spend money on it. We spend $1 trillion a year on it. Mm-hmm. And what a basic income does is it accomplishes what we've already set out to do with a larger benefit and fewer distortions
and
less waste
and a lot less administration.
Absolutely. So why not make it better? If we've already decided to achieve a goal, why not do it in the most efficient way possible?
That's a great point, Chris.
I can think of reasons not to, but those aren't good reasons.
Right.
I mean, the idea that I can make a profit off of providing necessary services to people, so therefore I can deny them the services. That's what's happening in the medical care field. I mean, that's happening in so many other fields as well. But medicine just costs a lot because we have profit takers in this country. Unlike any other country in the developed part of the world, we allow people to charge for primary care rather than providing it for free.
Well, I think that this idea is going to be difficult because there's this whole mindset of capitalism. I mean, it's our fabric.
Yes.
It's our fabric of American society, right? How do you square a basic income with no strings attached with capitalism? It seems pretty logical to me from an innovation standpoint.
Right.
We have the freedom to use it however we need, but capitalism, I don't know. That's a whole topic. Important issue. Money and capitalism. Money is the god.
Yes. Yes.
And giving and sharing and caring and taking care of each other is not the god.
Yes.
And so how do you square this thirst for capitalism with keeping this monetary, like I said, turbine going and flowing, but in a sharing and caring way? Basically, what we're talking about is we're going to need to share the wealth.
Yes.
And we've got to figure out a way to do that.
Yes.
I see an alternative to sharing the wealth, and hopefully in such a way that it's not dysfunctional to the country and not too many people are dead as a result of it. Are you familiar with the Powell Memo of 1971? Ever heard of that? Powell was, he later was a Supreme Court justice, but in 1971, he lived very close on his road to the head of the Chamber of Commerce. And the fellow said, Powell, the head of the Chamber of Commerce asked Paul, hey, could you make some notes and some ideas? Paul said, yeah. So what he did was he led the template for the Cato Institute, the right-wing outlets and so on, too. What he said is we have to control the media. We have to have schools, teachers that focus on these economic theories of the capitalism and so on. And then he got to be on the Supreme Court. And he really furthered the ideas even further. But it was Powell, in large part, who was responsible for the really conservative movement since 1971. Just a...
Interesting that date pops up because it's a very significant date. Just 1 year later, so up until that point, if you watch the curve of worker productivity within the United States versus worker wages, they curved up together. 1972, that stopped and that branched off, and you've started to see productivity continue to grow. It is now more than doubled since 1972. But the wages that workers experience has leveled out. It has barely increased, but maybe 20%, where it's gone up another over 120% in productivity. So I wonder if that had any sort of bearing on it.
Yeah, well, certainly with Reagan, too. I mean, the diversion was incredible at that point. Yeah. And Reagan made a big fetish out of money. I mean, he was really, before then, well, no, how about George Romney, Mitt Romney's father? He said, I'm pleased to pay all my taxes. I gladly pay $50,000 in taxes. Yeah. And it's yeah, I mean, at those points, those people were not isolated from the mainstream. That is, they lived in a house, pretty good house, but not a mansion, not a muck mansion and so on, too. Right. They went shopping and they saw other folks. Nowadays, they're just separated, so why should they worry as much? And now, the research shows that the richer you are, generally, the less you care about others, the less you have to be empathetic. It doesn't...
Yes, it's the sharing and caring that goes away.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, to worry about how to fit this into modern capitalism. And don't get me wrong, capitalism is fantastic.
As an engine.
Capitalism brought us our country. When you're talking about starting a new country, there's no better system than the capitalist system to build wealth in a country. The problem is you have to know when to stop using it. Capitalism is not a great model for a country that's now established and is starting to go through turmoil. And we have to move past that into a post-capitalist society. We need to start doing more to blend in, the dirty word, but socialist economic ideas.
Sharing and caring.
Yeah, and it's not new. We've been doing it. So much of our current government and so many of our safety net programs are already socialist. And you appreciate them. I'm sure you have never complained about the fire department or the police department. Yeah. And those are absolutely socialist. We are all sharing the cost of this public service. And it's done really well for us. And when we started these programs and when FDR started Social Security, we've seen benefits that have been long-lasting since then. And it's time to build on that, time to increase that. And time to really move into post-capitalism where we still allow the market to grow, but we do it in a socially responsible way, in a way that folks who are born into the wealthiest country in the history of the world actually experience the benefit of that birth.
Any comments?
I agree with you 100%.
But also, isn't it interesting now how with the millennials, capitalism is a dirtier word than socialist nowadays. I mean, it's really, thank God. I mean, it's, but the right wingers,
liberal.
but right wingers though are. I don't know. Is liberal popular with millennials? I don't know. But anyway, socialism is, so that's good for that. But the Republicans have for so many years vilified socialistic ideas and the idea that the myth. I'm a self-made man, right? I can do it myself. There's a terrific series of lines about Joe America who wakes up every morning and he thanks God that he's an independent person. But then you go through his day, he's drinking water that's safe and effective and proven so. Medication he takes that once again proven effective. He drives in a car with a seatbelt. Throughout the whole day, he is protected by the work of liberals, by people concerned about their well-being. And so the idea that we're a self-made man, I forgot who was it? Was it Michelle Bachmann who says, I'm self-made? Or I forgot, one of those recent candidates. You go, oh, I think it might have been even Mitt Romney, but I'm self-made? I don't think you're self-made in this country.
Yeah, I mean, so much of somebody's success has to do with who they were born to, the area they were born in, and a whole lot of luck.
Yes, infrastructure, schooling, I
A whole
know.
lot of luck.
Yeah.
And there's people that grow up in similar situations, make similarly good choices, get similarly good educations, and end up in two different places. And to say that one person did it right, one person did it wrong when they did it the same way, clearly demonstrates the amount of chance that's involved in somebody's success or lack thereof.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the Calvinistic, I'm rich because I'm good, kind of a
Right.
God, bless me with that.
Right.
Let me just say, there we are. We are Progressive Radio and TV. It's a time for universal basic income, and our number here is 503-650-0198. Can we see the thing that described, there we are, the beautiful picture there. Willamette Falls Community Media Center, 1101 Jackson Street, Oregon City. And please, if you have an idea, if you want to find out about podcasting, making videos, if you want to spread the word, bring your kids down, give them a call, 503-650-0275, 650-0275. And thank you so much for making it possible, guys. Thank you. Yeah.
So your specialty, you said that you do work to help folks get the Social Security.
Yes.
How much goes into that? How much resources on your end, on the seeker's end, and on the government is involved when you try to go through this process? How much waste do you see? How much money is wasted during this process?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So let's see, how do I distill this? When a person decides that they are so sick that they're going to finally have to approach the Social Security Administration for a label of disabled, and most of my clients, absolutely, I'm a non-attorney representative. This is one form of law that allows for a lay representative.
And it's assist, right?
Assist, assertive SSI service team. Most people can't get, most seriously disabled people can't effectively get through this extremely difficult system.
Right.
And so, and there's very few agencies throughout the nation like Assist. Legal aid offices used to help people with their disability applications. So there's lots and lots of disability attorneys out there, but they help with the appeals process.
Right.
And the appeals process can drag out for 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
And the mission of Assist is to do everything we can to keep it from going into the appeals process. So we do a tremendous amount of research and filling out forms, and filling out applications, and we know that there's a high percentage of homeless people that have severe disabilities, really high percentage.
And how hard is it for them when you don't have an address and an ID?
So they have even more barriers to this system. So,
Or maybe legal problems, drug problems, too.
Right.
Yeah.
so those are the clients we serve, the ones that don't get the help to begin with, but they're the ones that need this the most.
Right.
So back to your question. So we spend 15 to 20 hours. In the legal world, that's a lot of hours on any one case, just getting it started.
It hasn't even begun yet, just preparing.
Just preparing for the first decision.
Yeah.
And so there's an agency, so there's the local Social Security offices, the claims representatives, we do online stuff, and then they're supposed to pass that through the Ethernet down to an agency in Salem that works on reviewing the medical records. So there's another state employee that's going to spend hours and hours and hours reviewing these medical records to see if they meet the criteria. 30 to 38%, I can never get an exact there's like 5 million people a year apply for disability, and only 30%, between 30 and 38%, get approved at this first tier. That means 70 or whatever % get denied.
So these are resources spent that don't even result in a positive action.
Right, right. 70% of them get denied, and it's a federal system. So,
Right.
So then if someone disagrees with that denial, then they go into the appeals process. There's a tier called a reconsideration stage. That takes another 6 months to review, basically going to the same state agency, a different set of eyes, but the same state agency that denied them the first time.
Right.
And then the next tier is if they get denied again, which a really small number of reversals of that first denial happen, then they spend 18 months waiting for a 1-hour hearing with an administrative law judge who's getting paid, I think, I'm going to say $160,000 to $180,000 a year. And we have hundreds of thousands of cases in this federal backlog.
Active at all times.
So the Veterans Administration has veterans benefits with a larger, lengthier, multi-year wait for approval.
The VA does?
The VA does, yes. The Immigration Department has tremendous backlogs, and so that was a long answer to your question.
No, it's
No,
the proper
it's
answer.
good. It's good. It's
But
good.
the amount of people and time and hours and computer data entry, and it's mind-blowing.
It's larger than they're probably going to get their first benefit year.
So remember earlier.
some.
Remember earlier I told you an SSI recipient, the maximum amount is $750 times 12 months. What's that? 8,000 some odd dollars.
Yeah.
All of that for $8,000 a year.
They spent $100,000 to determine whether or not to give someone a.
How long is the wait time? Is it half a year for Social Security or no?
For the first decision, yes.
Half a year, 6 months.
And for the second decision, it's another half a year, if things don't fall through the cracks. And then if it's another appeal, then it's another 18-month wait for a 1-hour hearing with a very jaded administrative law judge.
I'm sure glad no one needs the money badly, you know, for housing.
And then the saddest part is that you go through all of this and these people and this blood, sweat, and tears that they go through, and then they get it.
And they're losing everything in the meantime.
It's less
they're
than they
selling
can make it a part-time job at minimum wage for most places. And that's a horrible way to treat vulnerable people who do not have the resources to fight for themselves.
Good for you, Chris.
I totally
Good
agree.
for you, Chris. Yeah.
That's why we started Assist. Yeah, I mean, and there's this huge perception that it is really easy to get on disability. It is that is such a misconception. It is very, very hard to get on. You have to have years and years worth of medical evidence to back up your decision, or to back up your allegations of disabled.
Okay, let me just see this. Thank you for calling tonight. Where are you calling from?
Milwaukee.
Great. Do you have questions or comments for our guests?
Yeah, how can we get Social Security pay up? Some of the people I know get $2 an hour, 40-hour work week, and some, work hard.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Would you please restate it, sir?
Getting Social Security pay up to where it should be. Some people I know get only $500 a month for Social Security. That comes out to about $2 an hour, a little over $2 an hour. And they ever keep talking about minimum wage, go up, minimum wage.
But, Melanie was just saying that the maximum is $750 a month.
For SSI,
Yeah.
there's 2 pots of money.
Oh, okay, right.
So I still didn't quite hear your question very well, but it is very difficult to iron out things when they're not quite right. There's a real lack of appropriate staffing levels at the Social Security offices to help people figure out these mistakes. So there's 2 pots of money. SSI is for people that are disabled that have not been able to work and pay FICA taxes into the Social Security Trust Fund. And then there's the Social Security Disability Insurance, which is the FICA taxes. And if someone is making $500 or is receiving $500, then it's possible that they might be eligible for the SSI program also. Not to get too deep in the weeds, but
I've known some people that's worked hard their life,
oh yeah,
made good wage, and still, when it comes out to Social Security, it still comes out less than minimum wage.
Let me just point out that in the 2016 election, we had, there were the polls done of voters, likely voters. Expand Social Security benefits was favored by 70% of the average people. I mean, and that's one of Bernie Sanders' big things too. And I think Elizabeth Warren as well.
It needs to be increased.
Yes.
The benefits need to be increased.
And if you put that on the ballot, people would vote for it. I mean, rather than tax cuts for the rich. Yeah. But your point is a good one, sir.
But if people is on SSI or whatever it is, they keep falling farther behind.
Yes.
Because they're saying that the people that work in fast food want more than, they want $15 an hour instead of the minimum wage.
Yeah.
And another really unfortunate thing about the benefits world is the cost of living increases are never on par with the general public's cost of living increases. the SSI program happened in the 70s.
There's a couple of years that people with Social Security didn't get a raise.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it's the cost of living increase. The benefit should not be $750. It should be more like $1,500, and it has not kept pace since the 70s when these laws went into effect.
And you also don't want the $2,000 limit cap.
And that $2,000 has not changed. So there was no cost of living on the amount of resources you could have.
Yeah.
It's poverty wages, absolutely. Poverty income.
Any last comments or observations, sir?
No. Let's get some more money out to the seniors.
Absolutely, I agree with you utterly. Thank you so much for calling.
Okay.
Great. It's so fun listening to you. I mean, you guys are so on top of this topic, so I'm learning a lot here today. Yeah. You know, in the time of Eisenhower, right, the top marginal tax rate was 90%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked great. And then Kennedy tried closing some loopholes, and it happened after he was dead. Johnson did it, lowered it to 70%, but tightened the loopholes, and they got a lot more taxes in as a result of that. Reagan just knocked the tax rate way low. They cost a lot of money, $380 billion or something. I forgot what, something like that, $280 billion, because of his tax cuts. Every time people try and cut taxes, they stimulate growth. It does not work out. What a freaking surprise!
That's the big myth, yeah.
Yes, and once again with this, we saw the parade of liars.
Well, again, they're cutting taxes for people who aren't spending their money.
Yes.
Yeah, the wealthy people aren't wealthy because they go out and spend all of their money. They're wealthy because they keep it, they hold on to it, they amass it.
You had earlier said that people in a lot of these circumstances spend every bit that they get.
Yeah, so the middle class and below on average spend 110 to 120% of their income. So they spend every penny they have and then some credit.
Yeah.
And those are the people you want to give money. Those are the people that you want to give breaks to, because these are the people that are going to go out and purchase all of these items and boost our economy and keep our domestic product strong by allowing the wealthy to have a few more $1 million. They're just going to buy a yacht, and that doesn't help anybody.
Right, or stow it away in another country.
Right.
Cayman Islands.
And then get tax holidays when they want to bring it back.
Yes, yeah, I find that yeah.
I can't get a tax holiday.
Yeah, well, good luck.
I actually, I want to speak to our caller one more time.
Sure.
I had a second thought.
Sir, listen. Yeah.
I hope he's still with us. I hope he's listening. $500 a month in any kind of disability benefits, it is low. I really want to recommend that that person get back into the Social Security office and find out if they're eligible for any more benefits. If $500 is just the Social Security Disability, SSD, then Social Security office needs to look to see if they can supplement that up to at least $750 with SSI. So there's the two programs, and the SSI is part of the Social Safety Net program. I used to call it one of the welfare programs because it's the same pot of money that the food stamps and TANF comes from. And but you know, if you don't have a lot of income or resources, or that person doesn't have, you know, more than $2,000 to their name, I highly recommend you get back into the Social Security office to see if they can bring that up to $750 at least. And it's so crazy for me to hear myself talking like this, because it's such a ridiculous amount of money. It's so low. But please go advocate for yourself or your friend.
It is so low, and you had been talking about the minimum wage increases and going to 15. If we had kept pace since the 70s, you know, wages kept
30,
pace with
20,
productivity,
like that. Yeah.
it'd be over $20 an hour for minimum wage
easily,
right now.
easily.
Right.
It's not the topic of this discussion, but I just started a business, and part of my my articles of incorporation and my operating agreement explicitly state that we will pay a living wage to all of our employees. And by living wage, I mean starting them out at a bare minimum of 15, and as expediently as possible, moving them up to that $20 mark. And it doesn't matter what they're doing, because if you get up in the morning and you show up to where you're supposed to be, and you do the job that you're paid to do, you should not have a worry. You should not have a concern. You should not be looking for a second job. My mother's been working for years and years, and she's trying to help my siblings get through college. And she works 2 well-paying full-time jobs. She makes 6 figures, and she's still, and she has to do 2 jobs to do it, though. She's been working in this industry for a long time. And that is just not how it should be. Anybody who wakes up and goes to work should feel confident that their needs are met.
Well, you know, maybe you're kind of narrow-minded. I mean, Amazon pays 7% in taxes, you know. Last year, I don't think it paid anything in taxes at all. So I'm just glad that the billion...
But Jeff Bezos made $9 billion in the last 2 days.
Yeah, but I mean, once again, no taxes last year is my understanding, Amazon.
Yeah.
I mean, but recently it's been 7 or 8%. And that counts everything, you know, all they pay, local taxes, state tax. But your mom's absolutely correct. We're rewarding the wrong people here. We're rewarding the Jeff Bezoses rather than the people with real needs.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And we should reward people who innovate industry. So that's a positive for our country. But it cannot be at the expense of the vulnerable.
Absolutely.
It should be in proportion. Absolutely.
One of the things I don't care about Microsoft with its focus on patents is now allowing the pharmaceuticals to tie up the futures of the pharmaceuticals for the foreseeable future. So I mean, it's crazy, people dying and so on, lack of medication that would otherwise save their lives.
Very backwards.
It's heartless. But yeah, capitalism, a driving, mindless system, as has been said, and I agree with it, if you can't pay a living wage, if you can't pay your fair share of taxes, you should not be in business.
Right.
And, you know, we shouldn't glorify people that do that. No, absolutely, and I feel sorry for your mom. But
yeah, I mean, she does it with a smile. You know, her
people a lot worse off than your mom too, of course. But what a terrible thing.
Yeah.
The austerity thing. Remember the big austerity debate? You turn on CNN and CNBC and you see these kind of dressed up people who say, "Yeah, what we have to do is cut taxes. We're going to unleash the environment. The economic engine." And people know that's a lie.
Yeah.
It's never worked. And the austerity stuff just is ridiculous too, right? We're going to cut down. We're not going to have public spending. Obama, when he was first elected, tried to get through a big stimulus package. Was told, no, you can't do it. But it would have really helped had he been able to do it.
Yeah.
Before him, Bush could do it, Reagan could do it, but the Republicans said no to Obama.
And you had discussed earlier, you brought up education and the
debt, student debt. Incredible.
Yeah, student debt.
Yes.
And I want to clarify, that's, you know, she's putting all that work in because she's putting 3 kids through college at the same time.
Yeah.
It's an amazing amount of money, and she doesn't want them to have that debt.
Yeah.
She doesn't want them to grow up and leave college and immediately have
$40,000, $50,000, yeah.
So she's working to pay for them as they go, and you know, she's put her work in. She raised, you know, amazing kids. And she should be able to relax right now. She's approaching her 60s, and she should be vacationing. She should be really enjoying her life right now. And instead, she's just putting in, you know, 100 hours a week just to get an education. Something that, if we went to Germany, even as Americans, we could get that for free.
Yeah, Poland. I mean, Poland gives you free English and stuff.
There's a lot of Americans checking that.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. 71% of people think we should have debt-free colleges and universities. 71%.
Margin.
Who controls the television stuff? Who controls the Sunday talk shows?
Yeah.
You know, it's a game to these folks.
Yeah.
I just find that incredible.
Chris, part of your paper that I really wanted to be able to talk more with you on is this. The welfare system is actually truly subsidizing employers.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you speak
absolutely.
to that?
So what they're able to do is, because the low-paying welfare is such, it's an employment trap. So there are means testing, which means that in order to be able to get this benefit, you have to have certain qualifications or disqualifications. And what employers can do is they can set wages just slightly over that amount to attract these folks. But it's essentially slave labor, because it's do this or what else? What else will you do?
Yeah, family, yeah. You had mentioned Walmart earlier in that context too.
Yeah, so we subsidize Walmart's workers. Many of Walmart's workers are able to take food stamps, are able to take a lot of assistance. So, you know, when our tax dollars support Walmart's lack of payment to their employees, and then we do it twice. Then we go in and we shop there. Well, some do.
Yeah, and
you know, I had a
Costco, yes.
a more in-depth discussion on this, and for now it's escaping me. But this idea of a subsidy for employers allowing them to find labor while paying less than subsistence level wages, it's a very real problem.
Yeah, a lot of people are eligible for food stamps that are working.
If we had a basic income, and through the basic income, which is no means, so I don't think we've really spoken on this, but you know, what is a basic income and what does it mean? There's a couple key points that really make it a true universal basic income. One is that it is universal. It's for every citizen, so it's a negative head tax. If you were born in America, you get this money.
No means testing, you said earlier.
Yeah, so it's unconditional. No means testing, no work test. There is one caveat. If you become imprisoned for a crime, you do not receive this money. It is actually more expensive to incarcerate a person than it would be to pay them this money.
By
So they,
far,
so they don't get that. It is paid monthly or weekly, and it's a direct cash transfer. It goes into your bank account, and there is no sort of limitation on what you can use that money for. You have complete liberty and autonomy and dignity.
Yes.
A couple of caveats: it does not replace healthcare. It does not replace education. So those are separate systems. Healthcare should be a right, and education should be a right, and that's not what this system aims to fix. And then overall, it is a system that trims administration costs, reduces waste, and allows a higher percentage of the money that we give to the government out of our taxes to reach those in need. And we actually have that in America currently. Alaska has a basic income guarantee. There is no means test. Every person that lives in Alaska shares an asset, and that's kind of the idea here. It is not meant to take money from the fruits of one's labor, but it is meant to be sharing a jointly owned asset, and the asset we all own is America, and America is an asset. We produce an immeasurable amount of information, media, music, and there's just no need for that to be held from the most vulnerable.
Once again, to get into the infrastructure and so on, too, with government works, if you employ people to do these kinds of things, you generate income. You generate a vibrant economy. Austerity was absolutely awful.
You feed the turbine.
Yes, you feed. It's a virtuous cycle, and people just, you know, you just go through the whole thing.
And everybody's contributing.
And everybody benefits.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have Greenspan, who said that his job, he thought, was to generate a certain insecurity, employment insecurity, so that people wouldn't change jobs or wouldn't feel secure in their jobs.
That's that scarcity thing again.
Yeah. It's, let me, you know, we are almost at the end. Gosh, that hour just went, holy, I was so, you guys are absolutely terrific at this.
Really quick.
So Chris, talking about a universal income and universal basic income.
Yes.
And you have a business that you're starting. And you're going to have a daily, well, anyway, when you do it, you're going to have a living wage, important wage.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody that I employ should not have to go seek a second job. And I want to make sure that they want to stay with me. I don't want to. I want to build a family.
No, throw them under the bus.
Right. Yeah.
And Melanie has a business called Assist. And how do people find out about it? Is it in the phone book?
Our website is www.programassist.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're a small team of 5 people. At this time, the need is tremendous. We have a huge wait list all the time.
So tell what your product is. Social Security, disability.
Yeah, we are representatives.
Yes.
Yep, we officially represent people.
Boy, that.